All right, so we got to really check what the heck this madness is. So, Kingslayer is my man here. Buddy of mine actually on PlayStation. He added me the other day. I appreciate it. But I got to call you out on this one, bro. You said Happy Division Day to the devs for creating by far the best franchise in gaming history and content creators for all your hard work. What are you talking about? Who says the Division is by far the best franchise in gaming history? Nah, man, that's not true. That's fake news. Don't believe this guy. He's a shill. He's the devs must be paying him to say stuff like that. Definitely, like he doesn't know what he's talking about, man. He's got no backbone. He wants to work for Massive, so he shouldn't be saying things like that. That's insane. I mean, really, the Division game, the Division had a 6.5 out of 10 IGN score. The user score on Metacritic is like a 76 or something. Who calls that the best game in gaming history? Get out of here. There's no such thing as that, okay? And so let's just dismiss that. And I'm just playing, bro. I'm just joking. I'm pretty much just doing exactly what I basically get to hear if I made a post like that. I probably will have a lot of people roll their eyes and be thinking the same thing. But the feeling is very much mutual. I really appreciate this post. I was being sarcastic in the beginning there. And the Division has turned 5 years old. The franchise itself is now 5 years old. The Division 1 game itself is 5 years old because the game is still alive and kicking. As much as I'll tell you that game had some really weird issues later down the road that I was not necessarily a fan of, they were almost always relegated in the dark zone. Everything else in that game I enjoyed. Till date, my favorite setup structure mission from the game is still a Division 1 mission, Falcon Lost. I enjoyed that 15 wave enemy barrage, all of what that game had to bring when it came to teamwork, and the fact that it was also in the context of a small team of players. So there's so much to basically talk about. How and where am I going to start? Started playing the Division game on the PlayStation console. I played with a community of gamers that basically enjoyed what the game had to offer. In fact, that's how I learned that the Division had so many more elements from Diablo than even many other games. This is from a seasoned gamer, somebody who was basically not a little kid. I think I may have mentioned something about the demographics of the Division. I've seen somebody say, how do you know the demographics of the Division? That's just you making up stuff. I'm like, you need to get your ears to the ground, man. Once you do, you know the kind of people, the quality of players that actually do play this game. They are not little kids. You're not going to find a lot of 18-year-olds out here. I mean, I know if you're 18, you're probably a very, very small number of players that play a game like this. The majority of our player base is in the 30s. That's the majority of our player base, and the 40s. You also have a second majority of our player base actually does span into the mid 40s and even the 50s. And then you also have a small minority that makes it into the 60s and the 80s that do play the Division, and I'm talking dedicatedly. So that's something that this game really brought to me. I think the Division pretty much provided a lot of I would say life experience. So one of the really interesting things about basically just, hanging out with people that have a few more years, not a few, but a number of years on you, is that you're able to just learn. That's the big thing about the Division for me. It's been a learning experience more than anything. So I've been able to learn from people who, at the point where I was just a 20-something-year-old, by the way, they had kids that were approaching that same age. So they had a lot of experience, and they would just basically say something that would get me to start thinking. They would tell me life mistakes that they made and, mistakes I should avoid as a young man. And this is just in playing a video game talking about numbers. And I got all of this interesting life experience all in exchange for just telling them what the best gear or best weapon was. Because, they'll come back from work, they'll sign in, they'll hit me up and say, hey, man, what gear do I need to run? What do I need to farm for? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, you need to farm for Hunter's Faith because it's kind of the gear right now that they just buffed. You need to try it out. Maybe you'll like it since you want to do a sniper build or an M1A build. I know Sentry was kind of the stuff, but Sentry got nerfed for the longest time, so Hunter's Faith was kind of like the intermediary before Sentries got, brought back. All of those little hints I'll give them, and they'll say, man, that's really cool. They'll be like, what's Final Measure about? I'll be like, the first Final Measure was crap, man. It wasn't until they actually chained it up and gave a classified version that Final Measure then became better. So I usually basically just off the top of my head, just talk about all of the different things, give them the updates. I was pretty much their state of the game when, outside of state of the game. And so over time, it just kind of made a lot of sense organically that I would basically come to start doing this for the broader audience. And I really do miss that community of gamers that I kind of started a division with, because of the way the game was structured, PTSs and all of that moved on to, you know, basically get more of a showcase on PC. So naturally, if you want to be on the top of the news and the communications, you have to have a presence on the PC to be able to see new things, talk about them, and share them with the community. So I moved on to PC, and I also met another amazing community of gamers as well, that it just necessarily didn't feel like I missed, you know, anything. You know, that was really nice. People were, you know, PC players for the most part at first, they were kind of different to deal with, because I guess there's a whole different culture, you know, when you're playing on PC versus when you're playing on console. I know it sounds weird, but having played on both, there is a really strong you know, cultural difference. I mean, at the core, you know, gamers are still the same, don't get me wrong, but it's just the way we approach all of the different things that we have to engage in while we play, the way we discuss, you know, things like if you're gaming, say, with a group of older gentlemen that are, you know, PC gamers, it's usually, you know, it's just, we're talking about a whole wider range of different things. You know, everyone's like, man, this crazy, you know, mouse that I, you know, bought, and, you know, they're like, oh, what mouse would you suggest? And, you know, everyone's like throwing out suggestions. Everyone's talking about how to improve, you know, the specs, and, you know, these are hobbyist type things. Whereas if you're playing basically on, you know, PlayStation, then, you know, the conversation then spans perhaps, you know, on other things that are not that, but still, you know, still brings in the life portion of it. So I guess those are some of the differences that I've noticed. And so I still, you know, engaging the community in my own capacity. It's very important for me to, you know, always see gaming from the side of the gamer. And so one of my best approaches too is, you know, I've always run the game just like a regular agent. You know, for the longest time in a Division 2, I mean, I did have a clan, but I just basically always match made for every event. In fact, I think I have match made for almost every event and almost every mission. And I just run with a wide variety of players regardless. And I've seen some of you on, you know, the matchmaking streets. You know, you guys have been, you make me want to go, oh my gosh, how'd you change my gamer tag? But it's really nice to see people say, hey, what's up, man? Thank you for what you're doing. And so it really does make the journey worth it. So one of the reasons that you guys see me really headstrong with the Division, and especially on my channel, is because of a lot of what the game has basically afforded me as a content creator. It was a game that basically allowed for me to be able to do something that I didn't really know, you know, or wasn't certain if I was even any good at it. I mean, I don't think I'm really as good as I would like to be at what I do, but, you know, I get to do what it is that I want. That's another really interesting thing. I get to play a video game that I like, and I get to basically make content about it, and I get to talk about, you know, extensive aspects of it. And the Division has basically, you know, continued to challenge me. In fact, because of the Division, you know, I basically started dabbling into game development, just looking at how amazing they actually set up this game. You see, that comment that's here on Twitter is not an understatement. This is not an understatement that this is the best franchise in history. As much as the gaming community at large could not, you know, basically approach this game, it does not take away from how special the game is. In fact, I think the Division is ahead of its time, the franchise. But don't worry, you know, people usually come back because, like I said, the Division truly did get poor reviews when it first came out. But this is the same game today that people are still saying is better than the Division 2, which is quite amazing because I remember playing the Division 1 and feeling like a bum. You know, until I met people that enjoyed the game, I felt like, man, why am I playing this crappy game and why do I like this game? But in the end, it's one thing that gamers do. You know, we just play a game that we like regardless of what opinions people share. So putting it all together, I think we're at the cusp of history. Many games would look back and wish that they had implemented some of the things that the Division was able to even fail at. You know how it is where, you know, somebody fails at something and, you know, it's even difficult to even achieve that because the Division is a new IP. It's a new concept. It's a baby. 5 years. You know, and sometimes I compare the Division to other franchises and I have to remember that it's like comparing an adult to a toddler pretty much. Think about it. Mortal Kombat 11 is my second most, in fact, it's my highest played game. The Division is my second. The Division 2 is my second, sorry. But if you put the Division franchise together, it puts Mortal Kombat, you know, on the second, you know, on that list. And Mortal Kombat has almost a 30-year legacy. So when Mortal Kombat kicked the Division's butt in the charts for number 5 best-selling game, while the Division came in at number 9, I shouldn't be too harsh on the Division, because if you look at the comparison, the Division is the baby. If people say GTA, I'm like, so what? GTA is no newcomer to the gaming scene. They've had years to fail. They've had years to understand what players basically want. Tom Clancy's Division is still in its learning phases, and for being in its learning phases to still be mentioned in the same breath as the old boys or the old dogs is still a majority compliment that I cannot overemphasize. Yes, call Destiny. Yes, call Borderlands. I mean, the wait from Borderlands 2 to Borderlands 3, wasn't it like 7 years? That's just from going from the second to the third franchise. So these franchises have had enough time to establish themselves. And I think the Division is basically at the cusp of what it means to make a modernized RPG looter shooter. The only thing is, I genuinely think that this has not necessarily been realized by the gaming community at large. But so far, so good. I think this past year, was a lesson in gaming innovation more than anything. And the Division will, at one point in history, finally get that special recognition that we, those of us who are enthusiasts of the game, think that it does deserve. Talk to you guys in another video. Let me hear in the comment section if you have anything that you want to let me know. Peace out.